Hi dancers, welcome back to my channel. Today we are here with professional dancer Leah, and she's going to talk to us about some dance mental health stuff today. We both were competition dancers growing up. We actually lived together for a while and went to undergraduate school for our dance degrees together. And we both really struggled with dancing in what we felt were hostile environments and kind of emerging out of those negative things that really stressed us out and then working on getting out of that. Tell us a little bit about your professional experience and how you've kind of come from the small studio world to emerging into what you do now.
Basically, my experience has been that I came from a studio that was really positive growing up. And then I branched out and I danced in Pittsburgh for a little while. And that was kind of the first time that I felt like my experience was hostile a little bit, just because everyone was really good and it was very intimidating. And sometimes the girls and guys, I suppose, could be really cruel. I don't necessarily think that it's always intentional, but I do think that people who love what they do and are also competitive can just be negative and can be really mean. And that was like the first time that I had experienced hostility in the dance classroom. The school we went to for undergrad, it could also be really hostile.
Yeah, and Leah was kind of on the opposite end of it. I think Leah was a great dancer. You came from a very successful competition studio. You would bring in old photos and videos, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's great. She's amazing. I really looked up to her. So me coming from having this really broken background of not feeling like I had success, I was really vulnerable when I came into Akron, and I was definitely an underdog as far as like where my technique was. And Leah was my roommate, and so she actually would hear a lot of the hostility behind the scenes that I was receiving, and that really played into like my mental state going into the classroom and how I was actually feeling. I know we had student run productions, and I definitely felt like it was super cliquey. I would not get cast in student pieces unless they were like direct friends of mine. So it had no take on like your ability. It was all about like who you were in with. And that was really, really difficult.
Yeah, I think that that's very common in
Yeah.
the dance world in general. And actually, I fell victim to casting people that were my friends too. So I understand why people did it, because sometimes it's easier to work with people that you're friends with versus working with people based on talent or ability or how their audition went.
Yeah.
I also think I remember very vividly going into like ballet class with you or modern with you, and you would just have so much anxiety before we even entered the classroom, because people, maybe they didn't have to say anything, but it was just the way they looked at you or the way that you responded to corrections or whatever. Really, it could just be very negative, and it sometimes made people, not just you, end up in tears
Yeah.
because
And leave the classroom, like not be
yes.
able to continue class because, someone was so upset by the directed energy.
I also think that sometimes the students would try to do the teacher's job for them on the sidelines, or they would speak up in class. And again, I don't always think it was intentional. Like, I think that a lot of times they were coming from a good place, but if that's not received well by you or someone else or myself, because we feel like they shouldn't be speaking to us that way, or they shouldn't be giving us direction on what they think we should be doing, it can just end up being a negative experience.
You end up feeling like really exposed when somebody says something like that. It doesn't come from a place of like, oh, okay, that's what I need to change. And not only that, students aren't educated on how to deliver the material to a dancer. So it's, just because you're a good dancer doesn't mean you're going to be a good educator.
Absolutely.
They're totally different skills.
Yeah, I also think something that ties into that is that when students are giving corrections to other students, it's peer to peer, it immediately makes you feel like, oh, they're better than me because they're giving me a correction, or they think that they know better than I do.
Yeah. And I saw that so much when I started teaching. I would see kids that were doing that on the sidelines, and I would be like, hey, listen, this is my classroom. Let's all like work together. No talking on the sidelines. Like, let's all, focus on what we're doing, because you can learn from other people as they go across the floor. And so, and I know that you like said as well, like your teaching style morphed because of how you were treated in different scenarios in the dance classroom, right?
Yes, and specifically witnessing how other people like you were treated. And it's funny because I think that I used to be that way. Like, I used to try to give my friends corrections. And
But it's different when it came from you, because I know you. We were very, very close. We lived together. I knew it was coming from a place of, I'm going to try to help you, versus somebody who I wasn't comfortable with coming up to me and saying, hey, maybe you should go to the back if you don't really know what you're doing right now.
yeah, see, like, that's just rude.
Yeah.
That is just like, you can stand wherever you want.
Yeah.
You should be able to.
Right.
Even if you don't know the combination as well as anybody else in the class. Like, sometimes you need to be at the front.
And that's something that happened to me, and I don't even remember who said it, but I was standing in the front of the classroom, and whoever said it, they came up to me and said that I was messing them up because I wasn't doing the combination correctly, and I'm standing in the front, and I needed to go to the back. Well, I was trying to stand in the front because I was trying to make myself get the information. Yep. You never know where somebody's roots or their root training came from. So I grew up doing Cicchetti, and in the Cicchetti method, at least how my studio would set it, is we would go in and we would take the ballet class. It was the same class every single time. So if you were in grade 1 Cicchetti, you were doing grade 1's syllabus every time you went in. So you learned the combinations, and then you carried them through the whole year until you graduated out of that grade. Pre-professional, professional world of dance and college training, where you're getting a new combination every single second. And I not only was confused by that concept because I had never seen that before,
right,
but I was just trying to learn this new skill. I was like, whoa, this happens? Whoa, I have to learn this new skill of retention and quick learning here. That was also really, really hard.
Yeah, which is interesting because I feel like your background was mostly in ballet, so you actually had great technique and you had amazing focusing skills. But when you're learning a new class every single time you walk into class, and not one of the combinations is the same sometimes, it can be extremely intimidating. And you're like, wait, I have this foundation, but yeah, I can't even use it because I can't even pick up the combinations at the speed that I need to be able to take class and feel successful.
Right. And that kind of brings me to the point of teaching. We really need to start enforcing that educators get a better grasp on how to teach people, because there are so many different types of students, different types of learning styles. You don't know, if you're teaching at a higher level, you don't know where everybody is coming from with their placement and their background. Even if you're teaching in a studio, you're going to inherit dancers from other studios at some point. That's just inevitable, that there's that ebb and flow. But you have to be able to know how to communicate and assess and essentially read the room. But yeah, I think that more dance instructors need to step up their lifelong commitment to education.
Well, yeah, because the thing is, even as an educator, you should be constantly learning yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, when I taught adult classes in Columbus, they were all drop-in style. So you'd get a lot of regulars that came every week, but then you would also have people that you never had before. They'd come one time and you'd never see them again.
Right.
And so you have to be able to adapt to that as a teacher. So I typically would teach the same class or a very similar class 2 weeks in a row, because I knew that, well, I would have this group of people that came last week, so I know they'll be able to grasp it better this week.
Yeah.
But then I'd also have these newcomers, and at least if everybody else knows the combination from the week before and we have a newbie come in, they can watch everybody else and kind of learn from everybody else, and not feel as lost.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's funny you said that, because when I was teaching in studios, I did a really, really similar thing. I had ballet dancers twice a week. And so I would give them a combination on, I think, Tuesdays, and then on Thursdays I'd see them again, and then they'd be able to feel more like masterful of the class. So then I wasn't just focusing, me as a teacher, I wasn't just focusing on delivering new material. I could actually slow down and look at the bodies in the room and see that, oh, okay, like this person really needs a little bit more help with their pelvic floor. This person really has to work on their ankle mobility. But if you're constantly focusing on delivering new material, that's all that's really on the forefront of your mind. And I don't know if you do this as a teacher, but I would always be thinking ahead of the next combination, trying to remember it if I wrote it before, or, it's harder to give corrections when you're teaching that way.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah, and I know that we both took from the same teachers, a lot of the same teachers in college, and Kara definitely taught me to realize how that could work as a strength. Because remember how she used to set class on Monday, carry it all the way through the week, and then Friday we would be doing class on our own with no cueing?
Yep.
Yeah, and
I remember that.
And that is actually why I stayed in level 6. Even when I ended up getting the passing grades to go into level 7 and 8, I did not allow myself to advance to the next level because of 2 reasons. One, I knew there were people in that room that were making fun of me and that had really poor opinions of me and didn't think that I deserved to be in the dance program. And so I didn't want to take class with them because I was scared. And 2, I liked how Kara built her class, where she would, have that that progression almost, where you felt like you were masterful by Friday and then came back and then learned the new combination. And she kind of would, almost like a personal trainer, where she would take those small bits of a combination, I remember, and she'd be like, okay, well, we did it this way on Monday, but now let's add some arms. Now let's add a head. Now let's add change of direction here. Let's add this. She would take it and take that base combination, progressing it up, which is a super, super smart thing to do as a teacher. And that's exactly what you do as a personal trainer when you're cross-training dancers too. You're not going to start them with the hardest progression.
Right. It also enables the dancer to build a level of confidence that can be kind of rare in the classroom, to where, oh my gosh, I can do the combination with arms and feet now. Mm-hmm. Whereas, earlier in the week, you're like, I can barely get the combination. By Friday, you're like, I can do the combination with feet and arms, and I also feel really good about how I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's important that you stayed in level 6, not necessarily because people were making fun of you. You definitely probably could have moved up and been fine. It may have been a struggle. That level was a struggle for me at a lot of times, because I have a background in ballet, but it's not as strong as yours. But I think it was important that you stayed, because you were able to build that confidence for a whole other semester. And I think that it's really helped build you into like the dancer that you are now.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think that I would have gone out professionally if I would have moved myself up and then kind of like mentally spiraled back and had to reset. I might not have been as bold to go out and pursue auditions without that push. So yeah, definitely was a good call on my part. And like you said, I was a ballet dancer primarily, and jazz. I liked jazz a lot. Not a tapper, not a modern dancer. Never even saw modern before going to college, so that was crazy to me. So overall though, if you're in a nurturing environment, things are so much easier, because then when I went to other places after I had graduated Akron and nobody knew me, I would take classes in, different areas, and I'd get compliments on these areas where I thought I was weak in them. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'm not that bad.
No.
And then I did progress. Obviously you can see from my old films, I have grown, we all grow, but it's really hard when the environment you're in becomes this toxic pole.
I agree. And I've seen it over the years. And I think too that if you take yourself out of that environment and put yourself into a different one, especially your experience in the real professional world, as soon as you get into an environment that's not toxic, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not a bad dancer. I'm actually a great dancer and I feel good. And yes, I have things to work on, but because you're in a better environment, you just feel better. So you're going to dance better.
You can manage it. Like, you can actually like write down the goals and say, okay, hey, this is how I'm going to tackle this, versus, oh my gosh, I just got corrected for 2 hours straight and my brain's going to explode now and I think I need to quit.
Exactly. And I think too, like, we had kind of opposite experiences because, you know, I did move up to the next level. And I remember my senior year, I think at least for half of my senior year, I ended up auditing ballet and I barely ever went.
That's right. I remember that.
Because I just felt really defeated. And by the end, towards the end of my senior year, I decided that I was going to be done with dance completely.
Hold on. Didn't you come back though on Fridays and start taking in Kara's classroom again?
I think that I came back once in a while.
I convinced you to come back in there.
Yeah, I kind of hopped back and forth between the two rooms for a little bit there. And it wasn't like offense to anybody else or the teacher that I had in there, which was Christina. She was wonderful. Beautiful. But beautiful I just felt like maybe I wasn't ready, or maybe I was ready, but I wasn't mentally ready. And so I actually, after that senior year, I took a big hiatus from dance.
Yeah.
Which was the opposite of what you did. So it's funny that like you kind of held yourself back, but not really. I think that it really helped you to do that. And I propelled myself forward, but then we ended up on opposite sides when it was like all said and done, which I think is super interesting because I felt like I put myself into a little bit of a toxic environment by allowing myself to move up.
Yep.
Not that every single person in the room was toxic. That's not true at all.
No,
I just
definitely not. There were some wonderful people in there.
Yes.
But there were some people that had very strong personalities who were not so nice, and they made you feel uncomfortable. Whether they were like saying it to your face, you could just tell by the way they were looking at you, and it just felt like you were getting iced out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hard. And then, you know, the things that get said in it's not it wasn't the locker room. What did we call it? The lounge?
Dance lounge.
Yeah, dance lounge. Yeah. I think locker room and I think of like football players. But yeah, it's very hard. And now it's funny because like I left the professional world, you're still in it. So yeah, we were like always on the opposite side of the fence, but I left for different reasons than like all of that. The reason I left was because I decided to have kids, start a family, and go back for some more education. And you know,
it was a positive thing for you.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like I need to leave the stage. Like I actually probably, you know, in my mind, I haven't really left. I'm just not actively working as a performer at the moment. And when my kids grow older and go back in school, I like plan to go and be back on the stage. And that's something that I think is, you take care of yourself as a dancer. You should never feel like the door is closed permanently. You can always be thinking like maybe in the future, then in 5 years, you can go back to performing. If you're taking care of yourself the right way.
Yeah.
Then
you take the breaks that you need when you need them.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the reason I ended up back in the professional world and teaching and all the things, which I'm not teaching right now, but I will be in June, is because I ended up in a positive dance environment. I just started taking these drop-in adult classes at a studio in Columbus, and I felt at the time that it was very positive. And then I ended up teaching at that studio, and I ended up dancing in a company. Someone who came and was taking class with me was like, I want you to dance in my company. And so it was a very, very positive thing for me to get back into dance because I was in a positive environment.
Right.
So that's kind of how I ended up back in it, and I just haven't left.
So what are your thoughts on like students who may be in a toxic environment right now? What are your thoughts on like trying to encourage dancers to leave studios, or at least advocate for themselves at that studio if they feel like they're in a toxic environment, trying to get it through to their parents, trying to get it through to whoever their guardian is, or whatever they can do? What do you think a good idea for that is to get them out of that situation?
Well, I think first and foremost, if it hasn't already been done, I think that intervention can take place in the studio sometimes first, because
Yeah.
sometimes teachers and students aren't even aware that the environment is toxic because they're so used to the way that it is that
Mm-hmm.
they think it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if something can be done within the studio first, that's really important. And if changes aren't being made or people aren't willing to make those changes, then I do think it's important for dancer, guardian, mom, dad, grandma, whoever takes care of that kid to have that conversation and to make sure, are you happy with what you're doing? Because you
Yeah.
might love dance, but if you're not coming home and you're not happy, then it doesn't add up, and they
Yeah.
probably should leave, and they probably should go somewhere else where they feel like they're in a better headspace to be there.
Or maybe like just if you are somebody who's listening to this right now and thinking, yeah, man, I'm having a really rough time in my classes, but I do want to dance. I just don't feel like I belong. Maybe go outside of your city or go to an adjacent studio, see if you can find like an open class somewhere and just go take an open class or a workshop and see how you feel in that environment. And it may not happen right away, but if you keep kind of putting yourself out there in different environments, you're going to find one that fits better. Because I know for myself, when I went through college auditions, I was so scared. And that was actually like one of the first times I had danced in front of a mirror was at college auditions. So that was terrifying to me also because I had never seen myself dance.
I
So
remember
that was super weird. Yeah, so like you never know how you will fit into a different environment. But I do know like in the college world, it's kind of hard for you to say like there was no option for me to say, all right, I'm going to transfer to another dance program. That would be super difficult because I would have had to rearrange all my scholarships and, you know, everything like that to have funding at a new school, find a new school, move. That's a huge haul.
Yeah.
But in those environments, I think it's really important to find your people that make you feel safe and make you feel like you're respected and you're wanted as a dancer. And that's why I stayed in Kara's class, because she made me feel like I was actually dancing for the first time instead of looking at me under a microscope and making me feel like I was an imposter in the classroom. And like you said, no, Christina, she was wonderful. She was beautiful, wonderful teacher, but I didn't feel that same connection with her. And I just felt like I was in a safe place in there. And so like I was able to really build up some of my armor before I went out into the professional world.
Yeah.
Because of that.
I think too that when it comes to not being able to leave the school, like you said,
yeah,
is not just finding your people, but also there's this whole building with all these studios in it that are sometimes available to rent out.
mm-hmm.
Remember,
mm-hmm.
we could go online and book rooms and stuff. I think that go in and bring your friends together, even your non-dance friends, which sometimes I would do this, and just go dance.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that you dance because you love to dance and not because of how other people make you feel about your dancing.
Right. And do you remember you like triggered a memory in me that we used to have these things, those dance chairs. Do you remember those?
Yes, I remember the dance chairs.
And one time Leah and I had the great idea that we were going to do kind of a farce, and we decided to start really like serious with a dance, and then it like cut into just being absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know why this was even allowed, because it should have somehow been filtered by the teachers, but people were allowed to just write in any comment that they saw and throw it into a hat and then give it to the dancer who, you know, was doing that. And I remember multiple people writing down that I should have never been dancing and doing fouettes with you guys. Do you remember that? I just remember like feeling so hurt because it was like, it was anonymous too. So like nobody had accountability. They could write whatever they wanted on those cards and throw them in. And
I think, you know, in that kind of space that you're making yourself vulnerable to comments, because dance share, you didn't have to get it approved before it was performed. You just went out and did your thing, and nobody knew what they were about to see unless you shared it with them prior. So I think, you're making yourself susceptible to comments, even if there wasn't a hat. Somebody could say something to you, to your face
afterward,
or they could say it to their friend, and it would get back to you. So I think, like, obviously things like that just shouldn't be said, because Dance Share was just supposed to be a positive thing where we just shared our love for dance. Nobody was grading us. Nobody was supposed to be really criticizing us. It was just supposed to be for fun. That was the whole point of Dance Share. So it is a shame that people wrote those comments in like that. I do remember there being a lot of positive comments.
Oh yeah.
So hopefully that memory isn't totally ruined.
No.
Because
honestly, we had fun doing that.
We had so much fun.
It was so much fun.
I think a lot of people really liked it.
I do too. I don't care what those other people thought, because I think that most of the people who were mean to me and tried to ice me out of the program, making me feel like I didn't belong, ended up doing absolutely nothing with dance. So it's super
very
funny.
True. It is very true. It's actually so interesting, and I think about it all the time. I remember the first time that I saw that you had a platform on social media, I was like, oh my gosh, Veronica is extremely successful with dance, and she has all these followers, and she's basically like famous on Instagram. It seemed like she was, because I don't have that many followers. I'm just like a basic. I'm very much a basic Instagram person. I'm not famous or anything like that. I just have my followers who are my friends who like me, or maybe some random people that follow me just because they like my account. But I was like, dang, Veronica is on it, and she is so successful. I mean, it was so surprising to me. Not surprising. It just was like, wow, if you really put your mind to it and you really do the work and do your own homework, you can be this great thing for so many people. And that is exactly what you are. And I think that there's a lot of people who, I would say, made fun of you in college, and a lot of people who didn't believe in you. And most of them I don't see doing anything with dance now, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But it is an eye-opener, because it's like, you never know what someone can accomplish. You can do anything that you want.
Right.
And
we're talking to the underdogs here. Like, if you are somebody who feels like this and you feel like you don't belong or you don't matter, you don't know what you're capable of doing, when you find the right people to help you and when you believe in yourself, because anything's possible. And the people who are breaking you down and making you feel horrible in class, they may turn around and become absolutely nothing one day, where they just decide to leave dance completely. And, who knows? And conversely, I wanted you to touch on this really quick, is just kind of, I know that you had talked to me and shared with me that you knew some other people who were kind of on the opposite ends of things, where they overtly felt like bullies, but they weren't actually intending to be that way. And there are those people out there where you may not realize it, but you may be saying something or doing something as your defense mechanism because you're hurting inside. But it comes across the wrong way to other people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Like, and that's what I was saying when I said I think sometimes a lot of it is unintentional.
Right.
I think that those people now maybe have come to realize that the things they were saying, or the way that they were saying things to you or other people, it was not the way.
Right.
And I actually, some of the people that I see now that are doing things with dance, just from what I've seen, it seems like that's changed.
Yeah.
But I do think that it takes some work internally to be able to come to the realization that, okay, I was trying to help this person in my way, but it wasn't actually helpful. It was actually detrimental. And so I think that there can be changes made, and that the changes won't be made if people don't realize that how they're talking to someone or trying to relay information is not helpful.
Yeah. And if they're hurting inside, then they need to like reach out and find support that they can actually feel, they can feel like they are happy enough to be in the classroom and not feel like they're constantly on the defensive. Because I've known people like that my whole life, like different people that have come into my life. And later on, I find out that really their tough exterior was because they were really hurting inside and dealing with some problems themselves. And they just needed, a hug.
Well, yeah. And I think that like everybody falls victim to that
Yeah.
too, not just in dance, but in life, and that can translate into your art, which for us is dance. And so I've fallen victim to it. I'm sure that you have. I'm sure that other people
My
have.
husband gets attacked by me a lot. So, I mean, he's usually the victim of my
internal battle.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, so I think everything that we've talked about is great. And I really hope that dancers listen to this and think, okay, like, I'm either going to go out and try to find my place in a new environment, or try to start working on some things that really build up my internal self-esteem, so that all those extrinsic things like that are happening in your environment outside of you, they're outside of your control, you can still sit there and say, I am okay, I feel okay. Because now when I go and take class as an adult, because I'm beyond that point, I go and take class down the road at Northeast Ohio Dance. I love it. It's an adult ballet class. I can mess up combination and I don't care. And it's not like I'm like, I don't care, whatever. But like I'll mess up combination and I just laugh at myself and like transition out of it, or, whatever. But like before, I would have a mental breakdown, start crying and leave the room. That's a huge difference. And that environment that I'm in that classroom is super, super supportive. It's fun. People are smiling and laughing, and it's very serious. We're learning technique. It's a great class, but no one is making the other person feel like, that judgment like when you go across the floor. Yeah. Right. And there's all levels in that class, like people who have literally just started ballet and people like me who've been there for years and years. And I always, whenever I see somebody come in and I can tell they're like a new person, I always try to like really go out of my, not like to be creepy, but like, hey, do you need some help? No. You want me to go across the floor with you? No, I just try to like be really real with people, because I think that sometimes I've had people come up to me and be like, oh, I love the way you dance and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm just really like you. Like, I'm just a person. I'm not trying to be anything greater. I'm just enjoying myself here. And if I mess up, and, that's fine. There's people with high levels of technique, you can still mess up.
Absolutely. And I feel the same way about, dancing in the company that I do now. And if I choose to go take a class somewhere, it is serious. You are learning, and you always want to be learning and growing, especially if you're an educator. But it's not that serious. We're there because we love to dance, and that's really what it is at the end of the day. And so it should just always be positive for yourself and for everybody else.
Yeah. And Catherine Morgan, I don't know if you know who she is, but I don't remember where in the context this was, but I just remember her posting something that said human first. Like, she was like, we're dancers, but we're humans first. And we still need to remember that. Like, at the end of the day, whether you're an instructor, a dancer, whatever you are, you're still a human first, and you still have to treat people in the classroom or your students like they're human beings, not like they're pieces of meat or pieces of garbage. So I think that's a really strong thing to think about. Like, we are all human. We all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. And that's why sometimes I don't edit out all my mistakes and like the platform, the combinations I give, and I will laugh at myself in the video, and then I'll just leave it in there, because I want people to realize my life's not perfect. Nothing's perfect.
Right. And if people see you as someone who is successful, make mistakes, they hopefully see, oh, well, it's fine to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the whole point of taking class too, is of course you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to get better if you do everything perfect all the time. You're just going to stay where you are.
Yeah, and something that I remember being said to me was, because I actually fell on my face during my carnival audition.
I didn't know
I
that.
was doing a PK turn. It was really hot in there, and I hit this slippery spot on the floor, and I was like in a perfect passe, falling down to the floor, and I like fell down like in a passe. It was the weirdest thing in the world. And then I like got right back up, and I just kept going with the combination. And I remember thinking, wow, I definitely am not getting hired by them. Like, that was really, really dumb. And then, you know, they called me and they hired me. And I remember being on board asking somebody, and I said, I fell during my audition. Why didn't you, like, did you guys see that? Like, did you turn away at that very moment? Like, what happened there? And whoever it was said, yeah, we saw it, but we liked that because we saw you recover really fast and you acted like nothing happened. And so we knew that if you'd mess up on stage, you were going to recover really well and you wouldn't show it on your face. And I was like, I never thought of that.
It could have been the whole reason they hired you. You know,
exactly.
The recovery, because it's like we watch people in the Olympics in ice skating fall. We watch gymnasts fall off the beam or get hurt, whatever, and they're Olympians.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay. Like, and I think that it makes you a human, like you said. We're just humans at the end of the day.
And you know what? Like, so many weird stuff happens on stage all the time. I had a wig fly off my head once. I remember my one friend Danny, I think she punched a microphone across the stage. Like, it wasn't a real mic, it was a prop mic because we were mic'd up here. But I think she went like this, and it was either Danny or Kayla, one of my friends, went like this. And the mic was flying and shattered during the show.
Wow.
It was a strong hit. So yeah, I mean, something like there's always something that can happen on stage.
Absolutely. Definitely. So, it's okay to mess up.
Yep, it's okay to mess up. So I'm going to leave it at that. And thank you guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Check out the Veronica K platform. And if you want a little bit more training to improve your technique, then make sure you go and check out the unlimited membership. And I'm going to throw a discount code in the description. Thanks for watching. Bye.